the air comes from the outside, and then we either add to it with this chemical soup or mold or biotoxins, or we have really good air filtration systems which clean the air. But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't really have good air filtration systems. So these toxins and chemicals tend to build up in the air, and then we just sit in them all day and breathe this stuff in.
Welcome back to Reconditioned with me, Lauren Vaknine. And this episode is, we're talking about mold. So let's not beat around the bush. It's not exactly the sexiest topic to speak about, but in my opinion, it really is, because health is sexy, well-being, wellness is sexy. So, we've got to really get under there with all the topics that we need to discuss in order to keep ourselves in a state of actual wellness and vitality and homeostasis. And one of the things that's really affecting us is mold and environmental toxins in our homes. So this episode today was specifically for that, because I think it's something we really need to focus on more. The more I delve into health and, the onset of symptoms for a lot of people of chronic health problems or unexplained symptoms of, all sorts of things, a lot of it ends up being as a result of mold poisoning. And we don't even realize that it's in our homes. Some people don't realize until they can actually, and for my sister-in-law, one day they were sleeping and all of a sudden they heard this massive bang and they thought there was an intruder. And they went into their dressing room and something had fallen off the shelves. The entire shelf had fallen off the wall because there was so much mold in the wall itself that it had kind of exploded. So they had to move out the house for like a year while that was dealt with. So that's crazy. So I really wanted to do this episode because I've heard of Ryan quite a lot. He is based in the States, but everything he speaks about is relevant for wherever you are in the world. And he gives loads of great tips about how to make your home healthier, how to mitigate mold, and not just mold. We talk about EMFs, we talk about water, we talk about light, all sorts of things to keep your home as healthy as possible. Obviously, he is based in the States, so if you aren't in the States, then you can't see him personally. His company does do Zoom consultations, and he said you would be really surprised at how much we could get done and how much we could figure out about what's going on in your home over Zoom. So that is an option, and his details will be in the show notes. So just go over to the show notes and you'll have a detail there with a discount code. I'm also putting in the show notes the links for everything we've spoken about that you might need to get hold of. So we spoke about, he spoke about the importance of purified water and like having a water filtration system. If you've been here a while, you'll know how much I talk about water and the importance of a water filtration system. So I use a great company, and, for years, these companies were so expensive and it was almost impossible for the average person to be able to upgrade their water and be able to remove these really harmful toxins that are in our tap water. And people were settling for like Brita filters, which don't really do anything. And this company, Pure Life Water, are now available at a really affordable price, which is why I've started working with them, because they do all the things that the other water companies that I previously worked with were doing, removing harmful toxins like chlorine, fluoride, and hormones, but that it's also remineralizing the water. And so it's doing all those great things, and it uses stainless steel so you don't have the rust element. And they also have an upgraded version of a water system, so you can get the standard one, the standard RO remineralizing system, or the upgraded one actually adds molecular hydrogen, which is amazing. So if you can afford to upgrade to that one, then that is definite. So I will put the details in the show notes with an amazing discount code for you so that you can look into that. And there'll also be discount codes and links for everything else we spoke about in relation to keeping your home healthier. So, EMF reducing products, blue light free lighting, all that great stuff. So that will all be there for you. I'm excited for you to listen to this episode. Again, okay, I know mold isn't like the sexiest thing to listen to, but I truly think that if you are interested in maintaining your health, your longevity, the health of your family, removing toxicity from your life, which is really the only way to keep healthy, then this episode has so many nuggets of wisdom that I'd love you to listen to. So as usual, if you enjoy the episode, please do go ahead and share it with a friend or a few friends. The more people that listen, the more people that subscribe as well and follow the podcast, the wider reach it has. So the more people find these episodes. And obviously I'm here doing this to help people find the information they need all in one place as a hub for all things wellness and inner growth. So if you would like to pay that forward, if you've learned anything from this podcast, because it takes a lot more than most people realize to actually maintain a podcast, then I would really appreciate you sharing that and subscribing to the podcast. So that is it from me. And I will now go straight ahead so that you can listen to this episode with Ryan Blaser. I appreciate you. When I was at the HEAL conference at Gaia in Colorado a few months ago, I took with me a jar of Wise Earth adaptogenic honey that I'd been using for an autoimmune trigger, and I left it on the snack table for people to try. On the second day, there was a group of producers and tech people standing around the table looking in awe about something, so I went over. Turns out they'd tried the honey. One of them said, "What the hell is in this stuff? I feel awake and alive for the first time in ages, and I only just took a half spoon 5 minutes ago." Then Kelly Noonan-Gores of the HEAL documentary, who was hosting the event, was like, "Give me some, I need a pick-me-up." This was at the end of a very long, amazing, but draining weekend. She took a half spoon and instantly felt revitalized for the rest of the day. Within minutes, all the incredible speakers, Gaia directors, engineers, everyone was taking this honey, and it was like the energy in the room up-leveled in a way I've never seen. I'm telling you the story exactly as it happened, which is why I'm bringing you this here on Reconditioned. Wise Earth adaptogenic honey was created in response to founder Daniel losing his sister to cancer. It uses traditional Chinese medicine and cutting-edge extraction technology to create a potent adaptogenic honey designed to combat the current leading health issue, chronic inflammation, which is how everything starts. It's helped people from all over the world combat challenges from lack of energy to digestive issues to hormonal imbalances and a range of chronic illnesses. It uses the absolute best quality honey as a carrier of adaptogens such as reishi, chaga, and cordyceps to enhance both bioavailability and taste, ensuring maximum potency and effectiveness. Mix it into your coffee, whack it in your smoothie, or just take it neat on a spoon. You only need a little bit a day for the effects to work. And as I've seen from those around me and my own experience, those effects are huge. So visit wiseearth.uk, that's WYSE, earth.uk for UK or .com for US, and use code Lauren10 for a 10% discount. Ryan Blaser is the forward-thinking founder and CEO of Test My Home, the premier company in environmental health and building biology in the US. With over 25 years of experience in environmental toxicology and a background in electrical engineering, Ryan has established himself as a leading expert in identifying and mitigating indoor environmental toxins and stressors. His personal journey of overcoming health challenges caused by environmental exposures fuels his passion and mission to create healthier living spaces for everyone. Ryan's dedication to innovation and his deep expertise have made him a trusted advisor to thousands, positioning him as a thought leader in the field of environmental wellness and longevity. So thank you for being here, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All the way from Boise, Idaho.
Yes.
Yeah, one of those places that, I mean, particularly for me in the UK, I've never visited Idaho, one of those places that just feels very outdoorsy, and like I think about bears and lakes and stuff like that. Am I on the right track?
You are, yeah. It's wonderful for backcountry. If you love the wilderness, this is the place.
Sold. I'm coming. So before we get started, Ryan, what have you done so far today to support your wellness?
Well, actually, I slept in a little bit today. So 3-day weekend, we went up skiing with some friends, and I just slept in a little bit, get a little extra sleep to start the work week off. That's what I did this morning.
Beautiful. That is definitely for your wellness. I love that. Amazing. Yes. So when you talk about mold, and I say to people, I spoke to my mum just when I was picking up the kids from school, and I said, I'm just doing some research now for an episode I'm about to do about mold. And she goes, "Well, that's really sexy." And I said, "No, it really is though, because people really need to know about mold because it's causing so many health issues." So I would love for you to talk me through kind of your background and how you got to this, because I think that's an important part of where we're going with this.
Yeah, and so I used to work in the field with the environmental control systems for like nightclubs and restaurants and churches and high-end facilities. And we would use sound, lights, video, acoustics, layout to really stimulate the body and produce effects in the body that were positive. And I moved into a home in my late 20s that had a mold problem. I wasn't aware of it at the time, and I got really sick. And it took 4 or 5 different doctors, about a year of back and forth and testing to try to figure out what was going on with me. And finally, I went to a functional medicine doctor that was more forward thinking and did um, toxicology testing on me and found out I had high levels of mycotoxins in my system. So, sure enough, the had a big roof leak in it, and there was a ton of black mold. So I moved out of that house, got better. It took me about a year or so to get my health back. And I realized that there's a dark side to the environment. There's a negative side. I've always worked with the positive, fun part of it, but there was a bad side. And so I went back to schooling and got my certifications in building biology, which is the study of the built environment and how it affects the body, and took jobs in a couple different industries, air quality industry, Department of Environmental Quality. And then we started this company about 6 years ago that's really focused on the indoor environment where we spend up to 90% of our lives and how that affects the body and how we can optimize our living space to have the best health possible.
Tell me what happened when you were working at the environmental agency.
So actually, I have a pretty crazy story with that. I went to go work for them. I thought, okay, we're gonna clean up the environment. We're gonna, deal with air pollution and everything. Well, every morning there's this call that happens with a bunch of government agencies and meteorologists and air quality specialists, and they decide how much pollution can be put into the air that day, depending on the weather and what way the winds are blowing and how much pollution's already in the air. And then we go out to the different polluters and say, okay, you guys can do 100,000 pollution units today. And then we're supposed to monitor to make sure that happens. Well, I was seeing that some of these polluters, when it was stormy or at night, they were polluting more than they were supposed to. So I brought it up to my supervisor and nothing happened. And I ended up going up to the head office with some pictures. Well, they ended up calling me in the next day and firing me for that, basically telling me that I'm, going outside my bounds of work and I should mind my own business. And I think there was some crazy corruption going on, something they were paying off, allowing more pollution to happen with some of these big factories. And so it just kind of opened my eyes that, holy cow, there's really not a lot of people out there that's truly looking out for our interests. These are the people that's supposed to be. And of course, it didn't happen. And so that really opened my eyes to, wow, we need to take it into our own hands. And we see this with the food industry and pharmaceutical, I mean, everything. It's all across the board, but it's no different for the
Right.
EPA. Yeah, it was a pretty crazy experience.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you about that, because I think that, what's important to me when I do these episodes is, that this entire podcast is about helping people to become sovereign in their health, in their well-being. And, from my experience, throughout now 22 years of being on this healing journey, well, I mean, 40 years of being on a healing journey, but, the last 22 years taking it upon myself from the age of 18, learning along the way the things that make you sound like a conspiracy theorist, but that you actually realize is just what's happening if you look, under the surface, beneath the surface. And that is that all is not as it seems. And that you cannot just trust, that the food industry is going to put on the shelves the things that are healthy for you. And if it's on the shelves, it must be okay. And the pharmaceutical companies are going to provide to doctors things that they can prescribe that are going to help you get better, and magically you're going to heal. And the environmental agencies actually care about the environment and your health. We're seeing this on a huge scale in the UK right now with chemtrails. Only today I was walking with a friend and we look up and just zigzags, absolute, just like crisscrosses all over of these white lines. And, as we knew would happen, an hour or two later, that mist and fog again, gray skies. And so it's just, I think it's really important for people to hear from people who have worked within these industries that this, all is not as it seems. And we need to take our healthcare into our own hands and take ownership of it. So that's where you come in.
Mhm.
So then you opened your company, and what was your company doing and what were you learning?
So we were going into people's homes and we were testing for mold, air quality, chemical exposure, water quality, lighting, EMF and technology exposure, and then and sound and vibration. And what we were finding is that a lot of these homes were moldy, and a lot of people are bringing a lot of toxic chemicals into their house unknowingly. And one thing with these chemicals, that only about half of them are tested, and they're only tested by themselves. A lot of these, in combination with each other, can be very dangerous. Like chlorine and ammonia can make chloramine gas, which is very deadly. And you know that the Windex and the bleach, how many people have that next to each other in their under their sink? And so the chemical exposures was a lot, but also a lot of these homes, they weren't breathing. They're airtight. The CO2 levels were getting higher, and we were noticing that the air quality inside the house was 4 to 10 times more polluted than outside. Because if you think about it, the air comes from the outside, and then we either add to it with this chemical soup or mold or biotoxins, or we have really good air filtration systems which clean the air. But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't really have good air filtration systems. So these toxins and chemicals tend to build up in the air, and then we just sit in them all day and breathe this stuff in.
Mm. So you mentioned quite a few things there, which is why I invited you on this podcast, because you really seem to be dealing with all, like, the whole environment: EMFs, light, water, sound, vibration, even. So it's not just about mold, because, I've in the past, and I've now found a company who I will link in the show notes, who's based in the UK. By all means, if you're based in the US, please contact Ryan. And also, Ryan, I know you do Zoom consultations, and you've said that there's a lot of, people would be surprised how much they can figure out over Zoom. But these companies, there are a lot of companies that seem to kind of just do one thing, and they're not really on top of, like, I think, like, as human beings, this is why, I'm about a holistic approach. I don't think you can ever, remedy one thing by just looking at one thing. You have to look at the whole environment. So that's for the home too. How can you just look at mold and not look at the water quality you're drinking, or the EMF levels in the home? So I would love for you to take us through kind of each of those elements that you're testing and why they're so important. I talk about water a lot. So I'd love to go into that, but I'm particularly interested in kind of VOCs, the forever chemicals in our homes, and how mold builds up, and what people are, go into all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. And so water particularly, I mean, we're majority of water is in our body. It's really important that our body needs clean, pure water. And the problem is a lot of the water that's coming out of the tap, at least in the United States, is pretty polluted. It's got forever chemicals, it's got microplastics, it's got pharmaceuticals, or it's got heavy metals from the ground, uranium,
Mm,
arsenic, lead. And so it's really important that we filter this water so that those things don't bioaccumulate in our body. That's really critical. Lead in the brain, all these things. Mercury is so toxic to the body.
yeah,
So that's really an easy one. Everybody should be drinking out of a water filtration system. If you're still
yeah,
drinking out of the tap, you need to change that and get a water filter. So that's kind of an easy
absolutely.
one. You can test your water. Um, Mold is going to be more difficult because mold, a lot of times we can't see it. It's behind the walls. Mold needs water to grow, and it needs a food source. It's just like us. It's an organism. And so the food source can be any organic material. That would be paper, wood, drywall, leaves, dead skin cells, the biofilm on your house if it's dirty or dusty. And then if you have any moisture, water leak, humidity, more than likely we're going to have mold starting to grow. But like I said, a lot of times it's behind the walls, it's behind the sink, it's behind the cabinet, behind the tile, and we don't see it. Sometimes we can have a musty smell, and that can give us a clue to it. But a lot of times, I always tell people, if you feel good elsewhere, but you don't feel good in your house, let's say you go on vacation for the weekend and you feel great, but you come home, and as soon as you come in the house, you start getting a stuffy nose or watery eye or headache or something. And these symptoms tend to just be with your house. More than likely, you have an exposure going on there. And if you live in a humid area or you've had leaks in your house, more than likely it's going to be a mold situation. So doing a thorough visual inspection and then talking about the history of the home and chasing the water is really how we deal with the mold stuff. When it comes to chemicals, there's a couple apps you can use. EWG, there's an app, Think Dirty, and you can actually scan the barcode on your cleaning supplies and personal care products, shampoos, conditioners, and you can see how toxic it is. A lot of this stuff, just the traditional cosmetic things we use, have a lot of chemicals in them,
Mm.
and we put them on our body. The average female uses like 15 different products every day. The average male uses 4 to 6 products every day. And we're rubbing this on our body, we're putting it on our skin, we're breathing this stuff in. That all gets in our body and makes more of a toxic soup, more chemical soup in our body.
So
That
when you're
affects
going
the
into
organs.
Sorry, when you're going into someone's house, are you looking at their products as well? I mean, you're looking at
Uh-huh.
everything. So you're going, right, here's your mascara. That's full of rubbish. That's going to make you sick, as well as
Yeah,
like the cleaning products. And then also, bigger products like mattresses, obviously, even sofas, carpets are all off-gassing VOCs, right?
yeah. So if you have a brand new house, the paint, the flooring, the carpet, the new furniture is all going to be off gassing. Sometimes for up to 2 to 3 years, this stuff can off gas and get into the house. Then again,
Mm.
if we have these homes that aren't ventilated properly and they're just airtight boxes, all of that builds up in there and then
Mm.
adds with all the other chemicals you have. It doesn't take much till you have a pretty toxic soup of chemicals that you're just breathing in every day.
If you've chosen to listen to this podcast, I probably don't need to tell you about the importance of connecting with the Earth's electromagnetic field daily, a lot, if we want to optimize health. Spending more time grounding, i.e., barefoot on the earth, actually helps the healing process and boosts immune function. But the reality is that most of us just aren't outdoors enough to get the full benefits of connecting with the natural frequencies of the earth. Even our footwear blocks this connection. So what do? Well, enter earthing sheets. I have an earthing sheet in my bed from Roland Earthing, and I've not only noticed an improvement in my sleep quality, yay, but also an improvement in overall vitality. By sleeping on an earthing sheet, you restore the electrical connection to the earth that you miss out on by not being on the earth enough during sleep, replicating being grounded in nature. And it works best this way because our bodies repair while we sleep, and we're there for ages. So really, this is the most valuable time to maximize efficiency of your earthing practice. The sheets are made from organic cotton and they just go under your bed sheet. And not just that, Roland Earthing donates 1% of all sales to Farmers Footprint, Zach Bush's amazing charitable organization, which really means a lot to me. Earthing sheets are also said to be really great for children with sleep issues and cognitive challenges. So all in all, I couldn't recommend these earthing sheets enough. And you can get a 5% discount by visiting rolandearthing.co.uk. That's ROWLAND earthing.co.uk. And use the code Lauren5 to get a great 5% discount off your first order. Yeah, because we bought this house 3 years ago and we remodeled it before we moved in, and we lived at my in-laws while we were doing that. And it was so funny. I've told this story quite a few times on the podcast, but we prioritize spending on things like blue light free lighting. We kitted out the whole house with blue light free lighting, but then I bought secondhand couches, not just to kind of mitigate the cost of the blue light free lighting, but because I didn't want couches that were off gassing. And it's really hard to find couches without foam and all those yucky chemicals. And for the kids, we invested in organic mattresses. But I'm pretty sure that there will be loads of stuff we bought that, how can you can't do all of it. Like the carpet, we put carpet on the stairs and we tried to go like natural with like sisal carpets and stuff like that. But, it's impossible to really avoid it everywhere. And what always, gets to me is that the things that are better for you are always more expensive. So like for the average person listening to this, how do they mitigate that if they're buying new things for their home?
Yeah, that's a good point. And you got to meet the client where they're at. Everybody's at a different level. It's just kind of like fitness or nutrition. We could always be better. There's always another level we can take it to, but you start to get to the point where it's diminishing returns, where you're so stressed out, spending so much time and money making sure you have a perfectly clean house, perfectly clean diet, perfectly clean fitness routine. You do the best you can.
Right.
And you make sure that at least the obvious stuff you're taking care of, and you just get better and better. But there's a lot of things that people can do that are free and easy, like opening up your window and getting fresh air in your house, taking off your shoes at the door and not tracking a bunch of crap through your house, going through your cleaning supplies. I mean, it's amazing how much just vinegar and water and a little lemon
Yeah,
essential oil can clean 95% of your surfaces. You don't need a lot of this toxic stuff. So really just
absolutely.
going through and replacing, getting the plastics out of your kitchen, replacing it with wood or stainless steel or glass.
Mm.
These are all things that you can do right away to make a big impact.
How much are plastics in the kitchen affecting us? Like if you've bought, say, plastic Tupperwares and they're like hanging around in a drawer and you're using them to put your kids' snacks in or whatever, even if they say BPA free, for example, like how much are those actually affecting us?
Yeah, they are a lot. So any of the plastic that's actually touching the food will leach a little bit into it. It's just a given. If you notice you have a Tupperware and you put spaghetti in there and it's got that orange tint to it now that the acids in the tomato sauce actually break down the plastics and get into the
Mm.
food. Of course, if you have cutting boards that are plastic, you're getting little microplastics in. Definitely don't put anything in the microwave with
Yeah.
plastic and
Well, I
touching
don't
the
have a
food.
microwave. Most people that listen to
That's
this
even better.
podcast don't have a
Yeah,
microwave. So,
perfect. That's
yeah,
that's next level right there, making sure. Yeah, so all those things are things you can do to help mitigate the microplastics.
amazing. From my research, what I have kind of established is that there's a lot of illnesses that we suffer from that we can put a load of labels on them. And it can be, I'm looking a lot into mast cell activation at the moment, but essentially it's autoimmune responses. And you've got an epigenetic element that makes you more susceptible, and you just need a trigger, a catalyst. And it seems to me like mold is a catalyst for a lot of people's really horrendous, in many cases, symptoms, and it takes a long time to figure that out. So I would really love for you to take us on a deep dive into mold, into kind of where is it coming from? How do we avoid it in the first place? Like if you are, like what are the things you can do every day, all the time to avoid mold? What can you do if you've realized you do have mold? Or what can you do to check if you have mold in your house? Like all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So mold is parasitic in nature, so it needs a food source, which is typically our home. So the wood in the walls or the drywall, the paper on the back of the drywall, or even just the biofilm, the dust that's laying around your house. And then we get water and we add to that, and then the mold spores, they start to grow and they start to colonize. But as they're growing and colonizing, they're releasing mycotoxins. And the mycotoxins are the thing that that's how it claims its territory. So its own species is immune to it, but all the other types of species or mold are not immune to it. And there's thousands of different species. So it's trying to claim its territory, kind of like a gang would, set up shop in a neighborhood, and that's its territory. The problem is we get in the crossfire with the mycotoxins, and it's very poisonous. And some mycotoxins a lot worse than others, but that's where we see a lot of the neurological effects, the skin issues, the brain issues. The it really breaks down the body at its weakest point. Whatever, like you said, those epigenetic triggers, whatever the body's weakest point is, your body's getting overstressed from these poisons and it's affecting the body. Now, there are people that are actually allergic to mold, like some people are allergic to gluten and they just can't eat it. Some people can. And for those people, they need to be a lot more careful and live in a home that's pretty mold free. Otherwise, they're going to be getting a lot of symptoms. But then we also have the mold spores that come off of it, and that gets into our body, and that's going to give us more of the allergic type response with the respiratory type issues, breathing, runny nose, watery eyes, cough, like cold symptoms. So if you feel like, man, I just feel like we always have a cold going on, that could potentially be mold that's affecting your body. So how we look for that is really just follow the water. Since it has to have water to grow, it's really a lot easier to find the water damage, look for the water leaks. Where's the roof leak? Is there condensation on the windows, in the bathtub, in the shower? Is there cracks where water could be getting behind? Does the toilet overflowed recently or ever? Hot water heaters, is there a leak under the sink? Anywhere in your house that you have water, the sinks, the toilets, the showers, those are the places you want to give extra attention. If you have a crawl space up in the attic that you can crawl around and look for roof leaks, particularly when it's raining. So if it's raining a lot outside, get up in the attic with a flashlight and make sure there's no leaks up there anywhere. You can use thermal imaging camera to look for cold spots in the walls. You can use moisture meters, but we're really, as mold inspectors, we're looking for water because mold has to have water to grow, or at least really high humidity if you live in a coastal area. So that's really how we find the mold is by looking at the water.
Mm. Yeah, I think, we'll often have the symptoms and not actually know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
How lengthy is the process and how expensive is the process to kind of, if you think like you're quite sure there must be mold somewhere, to go and actually find it?
Yeah, for a good inspector, I mean, around here locally, we charge $1 per square foot. So if you have a 3,500 square foot home, it's 3,500 bucks, and we're spending all day in your house.
Mm.
We're going top to bottom. We're in your crawl space. We're in your attic. We're taking your air conditioner apart. We're looking in the toilet tanks, under all the sinks. We're doing a full inside and outside inspection, looking for cracks around the windows. And then we can do testing, test analysis. So there is air testing. That's the most popular way. But the problem with air testing is it can come back false negative a lot of times. If there's not actual mold spores in the air at that time, I mean, there might be mold over here in the bathroom behind the shower, but it's not out in the airspace where I'm collecting the air sample. So what we do sometimes is we drill little holes in the wall and we do cavity samples. So underneath a bathtub or something, there's a cavity. We can drill a hole, stick a tube in there, suck air out of that area, and see if there's mold in that specific area or in a wall cavity. We can do dust analysis. So instead of sampling the air, we're going to take a Swiffer and we're going to wipe surfaces around the house. We can send that to the lab and they can tell us, is there an abnormal amount of mold spores in comparison to background debris? Because there's
And if
always
there
going to...
is, then how do you know in the house where it is? Like if that comes back as positive, whether from the air test or from the dust test, it still could be anywhere, right?
Right. So step one is, do we have a mold problem? Is there mold present in the house? And then step two is, where is it at? What's the source? And that's really the trick of where the source. So we look at all the places where potentially mold could be, like under the sinks, in the toilet tank, in the HVAC system, on the coils. So we, after doing this for so many years, there's places where the mold's at. And
Right.
so we go look in those places. Sometimes it does require some destructive sampling, which means we have to cut some holes in the wall. Maybe if there's a big shower and there's a big crack and there's some moisture there, but the other side is the closet, maybe we can cut a little access hole and look and see, okay, is water getting back behind there? Is it moldy? Get a visual. We can use a little scope with a camera that we can drill a hole and put that in the wall and look and see if there's any mold. So there's all kinds of tricks we can do, but a lot of it is going to where the water is or potentially could be or has been.
Some of you may remember that towards the end of 2024, I had a bit of an inflammatory flare up. Now, having been in remission for so long, it was quite challenging. And even with all my tools and the best practitioners at my fingertips, it wasn't shifting. And there were many reasons for that, but a friend told me about the energy enhancement system that has taken off like crazy in the States, but it had just opened in the UK. And I really was trying everything I could to heal, so I went to check it out. Honestly, safe to say, I've never looked back. And if you're suffering with anything from autoimmune conditions to mental health challenges to cancer, even if your pet is unwell, please stick with me for 60 seconds while I tell you what this incredible system of healing is. So EES creates special energy fields using scalar waves and biophotons that allow your body to return to a place of homeostasis and balance, because that's the frequency our bodies should be vibrating at when in a state of wholeness. These fields help to balance and optimize your body's natural processes, promoting healing and overall well-being. I've personally now had 2 daytime sessions and have also stayed overnight twice, giving my body 11 hours of recharging within the scalar waves. And all I can say, and my friends who I sent say the same, is I've never fallen into a deeper meditation or a more relaxed state than when I'm in there, showing me that it's absolutely doing something with my energy field, thereby promoting wellness. The energy enhancement system promotes the body's ability to detox, reduce inflammation, reduce pain, improve circulation, improve sleep quality, improve immune function. It regenerates cells and it balances the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which is why we go into such deep meditation when we're in there. And that's just the beginning. Guys, the body is designed to heal from everything and anything. And when it's synchronizing with the healthy energetic environment generated by the system, it can. They're based in London. I cannot recommend it enough. And you can get 18% off any length session by using code Reconditioned18 when booking. That's Reconditioned18. Just visit www.energyenhancementcentre.co.uk to book, or you can head to the show notes for all the links. I cannot wait to hear your success stories. And please note, EES do not make any medical claims. So I have sometimes seen like little black dots, on the wall of where my shower is. like, and a lot of people I think have that, right? Sometimes you just see like just a few, just a little bit, but it's little black dots. Like, what do you do in that situation? Are you meant to clean it, or is it going to just the mold spores are going to, end up in your face and you're not meant to clean it? Because like, could you clean that with some vinegar and some bicarb or something?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great option because again, this is an area where there's a lot of water. You're taking a shower every day, it's nice and steamy. Little mold spore lands on the wall. That little dot you're seeing is actually a colony starting to grow. To be visible like that, there's probably in the thousands or tens of thousands of mold spores starting to colonize in that little teeny dot. If you were to leave that and keep it going with moisture in there, eventually it would turn into, bigger and bigger and it would all grow together.
Mm.
But just simply wiping it on the surface, cleaning and wiping it and keeping it clean and keeping it dry, also making sure you're using your ventilation fan in there so when the steam
Mm.
comes up it gets sucked out and doesn't get a chance to condensate. If it's surface like that, we can just clean it as long as it's not a leak that's behind the wall. When
Right.
it's in the wall cavity, that's a different story, then we have to
Yeah.
address it differently. But when it's just surface on the tile or on the walls around the shower, just wiping it and cleaning it up. Yeah, vinegar
Oh,
and
great.
water looks fine. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
So I could just like do that myself with some vinegar and water and
Yep.
just keep it dry, and that's kind of the dry it afterwards. And
Yeah.
would you say that most people's homes have mold? Like, do you find mold in most people's homes?
Yeah, if I look hard enough, I can find mold in every home. In fact, I bet even in my own house, if I went digging deep enough, somewhere there's going to be a little bit of mold. Look, maybe we left some bread in the cupboard too long. It got a little mold on it, or some fruit in the fruit basket, or maybe one of the toilet tanks, or an old rag in the laundry room or something. There's always going to be something. Yeah.
So I guess I have two questions about that. The first one is, okay, so what do we do about it? Because obviously we don't want to get sick. But secondly, is a little bit of that good for us? Do we need to build up a tolerance to that?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily good for us, but when you do live in a pure, clean environment and you don't expose yourself to some of these things, then you can get desensitized. So
Mm.
by building up and being a little bit exposed, we can build a little bit of a tolerance. Although some people that have been exposed to mold, it's the opposite. Now they actually get worse because of the mold, and their body, their limbic system is putting up a red flag anytime mold shows up, like, hey, you got really sick from this. We're going to send the red flags out a lot earlier.
Yeah.
So you can that the building up, of that doesn't always work. It's more of a long-term thing. Overall, we don't want to be exposed to these toxins if we can. There is the hermetic stress portion of that, which is what you're talking about. It's kind of like going to the gym. We work out our muscle, break it down, and then it grows back stronger. That's hermetic stress. So we
Mm.
do want some degree of that in our lives, but mold is kind of a different story. Because a lot of people are really affected negatively. So if we can eliminate that. But also, there's thousands of species of different kinds of mold, and some mold is very toxic, and some mold is not very harmful at all. Like penicillin and some of these things can actually be helpful. Blue cheese, stuff like that, where
I
it's
was
not.
gonna say cheese, like
Yeah.
a lot of cheeses
Mhm.
have mold on them. Like how I always think I love cheese, but I,
Yeah.
I try to, eat. I mean, everything I eat is organic, and I'm, really kind of conscious of what I eat. But I do think, well, that's mold. But like, what's
Yeah.
that doing to my gut microbiome? Um, so yeah, but like, we had an orange that went moldy in the bottom of the fruit bowl, and then I saw like a blue, like it left a blue mark even when I took the orange out, and I felt like I had to scrub that away. There's probably mold spores in the fruit bowl now, right?
Right. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And so you got to clean that really good. And that staining you're seeing is because the mold has little mycelium, little roots. It's kind of like
Mm.
think about like a tree. It's growing, it's
Mm.
got roots that go into the ground. The mold does the same thing into the surface. And so that's why we get the staining. And you can wipe the surface and the mold spores could be gone, but we still have the staining left over from the mycelium that's growing into the surface.
Mm. It's a bit overwhelming, really, isn't it? Like there's so much we need to do to
It,
prevent
it can
this.
be. It can be, but the bottom line with a lot of this stuff is keeping our homes clean,
Yeah.
keeping the house clean, taking the food away from the mold, taking the food away from the pests, from the bacteria, from dust mites and cockroaches or anything. They're in there trying to live and trying to survive. And if we take the food source away by keeping our homes really clean, that solves a lot of problems.
I'd say one of the only few benefits of living in a cold country like England is we don't have cockroaches to deal with. So that's something.
That's
Um,
good. Yes.
yeah. But obviously, but I didn't realize that kind of dust could be a problem. And it's funny sometimes because, you can see people who are like always sick and you go into their homes and you're like, your home's really dirty. Like
Mhm.
that's going to cause a problem. Like that, then they're looking for all these things of what, or maybe I'll try this remedy or that remedy and actually like just clean your home. And I think about, my grandmothers and great grandmothers, and they were so meticulous with cleaning. They were really, and they knew how to clean properly, right? They would have all the remedies. And I just remember my grandmother, like vinegar and lemon and just all like cleaning doorsteps and cleaning windowsills and things that we don't really always get to. I think about like, I'm just looking at my blind in my office, like the blind in front of my window. And like there's dust on it, and I definitely don't clean it enough. So I probably need to get even even more OCD with the cleaning.
Yeah, because if we were to analyze the dust of a random home, the majority of it's going to be dead skin cells. It's going to be insect parts, insect feces. It's going to be dust mites. It's going to be bacteria, mold spores, microplastics, and then residue from chemicals and broken down fibers and foams from the furniture. So that's typically what we see in dust. So really, none of that stuff we want to breathe in. It can cause issues.
Yeah. So to go back to the chemicals, it's interesting because obviously I'm always advocating for, natural toxin-free body products, makeup, all my makeup is, non-toxic, everything in my home. But it's interesting hearing you say this for people listening to understand just how important that is, down to things like candles. And, I talk a lot about synthetic fragrances. I believe synthetic fragrances to be one of the most detrimental things to our health, that one of the most toxic things in our homes. From your perspective of testing it, how dangerous are these synthetic chemicals like candles? I mean, dare we mention the plugins that literally stop me from being able to breathe if I go in someone's house and they've got it in? And I'm like, how do you not know yet how toxic this is?
Yeah, no, I've had quite a few stories where they'll call me up, and a lot of times people get a hold of me because they're having a health problem, and they'll call me up and say, "Oh, the whole family just stuffy nose. They're not the cold. It doesn't go away." And I go into the house and they got candles lit everywhere and the plug-ins and all
Right.
these fragrances. Like, well, because you're literally poisoning your family. This stuff is not good. There's chemicals in it, synthetic chemicals, the phthalates. They're endocrine disruptors. They mess up with the hormones. We're meant to just breathe fresh air and clean air. We're not designed to breathe these chemicals, especially in this amount of exposure and amount of time, like all day throughout the year and throughout the house. A lot of these candles and things are going, and so it's really good to eliminate that stuff. I see a lot of health symptoms change and improve when they get
Mm.
rid of the chemicals.
So it's like if someone's listening to this feeling a bit overwhelmed about how much it could cost to go through this whole process, actually one of the first most important things you can do is just get rid of stuff that isn't good.
Absolutely.
You don't have to bring in a whole load of, stuff and do a whole load of new things, but just get rid of the toxic stuff in the first instance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've done a bunch of podcasts like this where we kind of outline and go through it. And on my website, there's a link to a bunch of them. There's one of them, just quick tips. I think we did a whole podcast where we just went over like 40 tips, easy things that you can do. And so just do a little bit of the research and learn some of this stuff and implement some of these things. You can go pretty far without really having to spend any money on this stuff, just making some simple changes.
Yeah. Okay, so what would be your top tips then for avoiding mold in the home?
So main thing is just keep your home dry. That's really going to be the biggest thing. If you live in an area with higher humidity, get a humidity meter. You can get those for 20, 30 bucks on Amazon. And if it gets much above 50%, you want to implement a dehumidifier in your house and make sure you're keeping the humidity low. So on top of that, then just do regular inspections. Look underneath your sink, look behind your fridge, look in the attic. A really big one is looking in the toilet tank. So the toilet tank is like a natural petri dish. It's a dark, damp place, and whenever you flush the toilet, water gets pulled into the back, or air gets pulled into the back to displace the water, and there's mold spores in that, and they can land on the surfaces. So if we see mold growing in the toilet tank, and well, when I go to an Airbnb or a hotel, that's one of the first things I'll do is look in the toilet tank, and if there's a bunch of mold growing in there, I'll ask for another room because that's typically a sign that something bigger is going on. But
Mm.
keep taking the food source away by keeping it clean and taking the water away by keeping it dry. That's really the name of the game with mold. It's really fairly simple.
Right. Okay. I wonder how much I know that there are many causes of this, many contributing factors as there is to anything. Obviously, we're seeing a huge increase in neurological and cognitive challenges with children, also with adults. How much of that do you think is down to kind of environmental toxins in our homes and all around us?
I think environmental toxins affect everybody at some level. It's just a
Mm.
matter of how much is it affecting you, how quick is your body able to detox, how healthy are you on other fronts. But we can always make improvements by cleaning up the toxins that are going into our body.
Mm.
It's a
Because I
big.
think about, the lifespan of someone who was born in, say, the 1950s, like my mum, for example, to me, to my kids, right? And what they're exposed to even from the womb onwards. And it just seems to get worse and worse with every generation. Women pregnant using, perfumes and all these synthetic chemicals and, lighting candles and being around all this stuff. And I just always wonder to myself, because I'm, always observing this kind of increase in neurological challenges with children. And just from my perspective, it feels like that must have something to do with it.
It does, yeah. And there's been some changes made and some improvements. For example, lead and asbestos were used all the way up into the
Mm,
80s, which are now illegal to use in homes. So that's good. And things like DDT, some of these really harmful pesticides, but it's being replaced with, glyphosates and different kinds of plastics and new chemicals, and now tons of electronic exposure and EMF
right.
and 5G and now we have LED lighting that's not natural. So yeah, we're cleaning and we're making some changes, but we're also adding new stuff in. And so we're always getting bombarded with this new stuff. I think overall, we're getting more and more exposed to it. And a lot of it is because we're spending more and more time indoors. 100 years ago, people spent hardly any time indoors. They were outside most of the time. Now
Mm,
it's flip-flop. The majority of our time is either at work, at school, in a car, or at our house. I mean,
mm,
how many times are people actually outside, unless you're being intentional, like I'm going to go for a walk, we're going to go to the park. But a lot of times, most people are spending inside their homes, and now we have all this toxic soup, mold, bacteria that everyone's breathing in. They're getting exposed to it.
yeah. Okay. So if we were kind of to wrap up with your top tips for people on how to reduce environmental toxins in their lives and kind of feel better based on the environmental toxins they're around, what would your top tips be if you were to like reel off like 5 to 10 top tips? Do this, and that.
Yeah, make sure you're getting fresh air in your house. The only really time this doesn't apply is if it's super humid outside, or maybe it's during fire season, or it's really smoky or polluted. Then you want to keep your doors closed. But for the most part, we want to have that fresh air. If you go outside and it smells fresh and clear, and then you walk inside your home and it's kind of
Mm.
musty and the air's heavy, it needs to be flushed out. You need fresh air in your house. So that's really a big, easy one that you can do.
Can
Just
I
15 minutes in
Can
the
I
morning and
off
taking
the
a nap.
back of yeah, off the back of that, sorry, but I just before you went on to the next one, I wanted because I live in the UK and it gets cold. And so we all have central heating or like underfloor heating or radiators or whatever it might be. And I am a cold person, but I hate stuffy rooms. I hate it when it's stuffy. So I'll often have a window open even if I'm cold. And I always open windows in the morning. But when you walk into people's houses and it's just hot and it's stuffy and it's like, even if it's not wet, what is that constant heat doing to us?
Um, The heat, not as much, unless you're sensitive to temperature and you like it cooler and you're just warm-blooded and you like it cooler. But it's the stuffy parts, the CO2 that's building up in there. And that's really what we're sensing. That's what we're feeling is that as we breathe out CO2, we breathe in oxygen. As that exchange happens throughout the day, the CO2 levels creep up and up and up, especially if there's 4 or 5 people in the house or a school room where there's 30 kids. The
Mm.
CO2 levels can get pretty high, and that's really what we're sensing. That's what we're feeling when we go into the room and it feels stuffy or
Right.
hot or heavy. It's the high CO2 levels.
Ah, okay. All right, interesting. Great. So
Yeah.
always keep a little window open for ventilation. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the next
Yeah.
one?
On your HVAC system, if you have central air, there's an adjustment on the fan to either go to fan or to auto. Just flip it over to fan mode on all the time. And what that will do, and instead of when it's heating or cooling, it's on, the fan will be running all the time. But then in conjunction with that, make sure your HVAC filter is a high quality one, not one of those cheap ones you buy at the grocery store. Get a higher quality, like a MERV rating of 11 or higher. And what that's going to do is cycle air through that filter and act as a really good air filtration system for your house. So you don't necessarily need to go out and buy a couple $1,000s worth of air filters. I mean, that's nice. You can do that, and I do recommend that. But you can go buy a nice $20 MERV 11 filter, then turn your fan to on mode, and you're filtering your air. The air exchanges happen several times an hour and really cleaning the air in your house. So
Mm.
that's a big one. It's also moving air over the coils and keeping the coils dry so that we have a lower potential of mold growing in the coils.
How
That's
good are air purifiers?
I love them. I think it's great. I have one in every room. I have two
Really?
in the bedroom. Yeah, I think pulling all this stuff out of the air and capture it in the filters before it gets in our lungs. If we don't filter with that, our lungs are going to be the filters. We're going to be breathing in our body.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of that. And that could be another one, if you don't have a whole lot of money and you're just starting from scratch, you can buy one of those box fans from Home Depot or Walmart and then tape one of the air filters to it. So a 24 by 24, 20 by 20 air filter and just literally tape it to the back and turn that fan on. And for $40, you have yourself an air filter. It's not the best looking. It's kind of noisy, but it's going to filter your air. Like if you have a basement or another room, you can put it in and filter the air. So that's a big one. Um, I mentioned this before, but taking off the shoes, when we go
Mhm.
walk outside, fill up our car with gas and we step in the oil and the gasoline and you go in the public bathrooms and there's E. coli and harsh cleaning supplies and you go walk at the park and there's chemicals on the lawn and then we track all that stuff into our house. I mean, that's the
Mm.
worst thing you can do, especially if you have kids or little ones that play on the floor. You absolutely want to make sure that you are not wearing your outside shoes in the house. The homes I test that have a strict no shoe rule are always much cleaner and less
Good.
polluted than the ones that don't, because over time we're tracking that stuff in and it's not good. So I'd have a really strict no shoes policy in your house.
I love that. Yeah, we have a really strict no shoes policy, but when my parents or my in-laws come over, they get really annoyed that they have to take off their shoes.
Well, they'll just have to get used to it. It's like, I mean, it's just like anything. I mean, you would respect someone's house and their rules, and you don't want to track crap in their house. I mean, that's just, to me,
I
it's,
think people just don't realize. People are like, "Oh, my shoes go with my outfit," and I think people just think it's just about I might bring some mud in that you'll then have to clean, but like you're saying, it's about so much more.
yeah, the bottom of shoes are nasty.
I
Yeah,
always
well,
think like if I'm in an airport bathroom and like and I'm looking at that and I'm wearing my shoes. I mean, I'm always thinking about that with public toilets. Like, why would I want to go into a public toilet, come home, and then wear those same shoes through my house?
yeah, at worst, kick
Gross.
them up on the couch or jump on your bed or something like it's so gross. Yeah, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
bad one. Um, Another one, and we didn't really talk too much about this, is the technology in our house. If
Mm.
we're not using something, turn it off, power it down.
Yes.
We have all these devices throughout our house, the Wi-Fi, the wireless printer, we got the game station, play, all these things are on and they're transmitting EMF. And if we're not using them, we're getting exposed unnecessarily. So, for example, at night, if you don't need your Wi-Fi on, put it on a timer or a switch so that at night it turns off. And then when you're really needing that true rest and healing state, we don't have that EMF that's affecting us, that's going into our brain waves and not allowing us to get in that deep sleep. And so,
Right.
turning off the electronics, putting the phone on airplane mode, turning the Wi-Fi off at night, turn the TV and the game station off if you're not playing it or using it. And we do, we turn our circuits off at night to our bedroom. We go one step further. So actually, our last house, we had to go out to the circuit breaker and actually flip it off. But now we have a remote control switch. It's called a kill switch or an EMF sleep safe switch. And it turns the circuits off to our bedroom and the kids' room so that we sleep in a zero EMF field. That makes a big
Amazing.
difference.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, just go find out which circuit is to your bedroom and try it for a weekend and or a week and turn the circuits off and see how much better you sleep. It's amazing. A lot of people say, "Oh, I remember my dreams," or "I wake up rested." It makes a
Mhm.
big difference.
A lot of people say, because I always tell people to turn off their Wi-Fi at night, and they're like, "But I've got a smart system, and my alarm is linked to the Wi-Fi." So I never really have an answer for people in that situation. Do you have an answer about that?
Yeah, I tell them to get a big dog instead
Yeah,
of a.
that's what we got. Keep the alarm off, get a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Done.
mean, you can hardwire the alarm system if it's a little bit more money to do that, but you can hardwire your alarm system would be another option.
Okay.
So that's not wireless. Um, we talked about making that mixture with half distilled vinegar and half distilled water with a little lemon essential oil and
Mhm.
use that as your all-purpose cleaner. I mean, you could literally drink this stuff,
Yeah.
and that's how natural it is. And so you can spray that around your house as much as you want. Get a garbage bag and go throughout your house and throw away anything that says fragrance or perfume on it.
Hmm.
It's a big one you can do. And that's hard. Sometimes people feel like they got to have that certain smell in their house.
Oh,
But,
yeah. Like
I,
the fabric softeners and the laundry
Mhm.
detergents, and everyone's like, yeah, but when I recommend these natural ones, and they're like, yeah, but does it smell like, fresh cotton breeze, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, but it's not meant to.
It's not meant to. It's not supposed to. So clean doesn't have a smell. And that's the thing that we need to get in our minds is that if something is clean and pure, it's not going to smell like anything. If we're smelling something, it's typically not something we really want to breathe in, unless it's actual true flowers or something really natural. But a lot of times it's not. It's chemical based. So when they say fresh mountain spring air laundry detergent, they didn't go bottle fresh mountain air. That's a chemical to make you think it smells like that, you
Right.
know and it's
Yeah.
greenwashing. And a lot of this, like the Lysol with the lemon on it, lemon Lysol, there's no lemons in there, that's
No.
all greenwashing.
But essential oils are good, right? Like I use essential oils for
Mhm.
everything, and they do make the house smell nice.
Yeah. Yeah, lemon essential oil or any essential oils are fine. Some people can overdo it though. I have seen
Yeah.
situations where they're diffusing 24/7 and the particulate count in their house is so high. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a natural oil, but it can start to affect the respiratory system if you do
Yeah.
too much of it.
I think it affects the endocrine system as well, to be honest. I think that we're not supposed to have fragrance all the time. I do think that
Yeah.
there is an endocrine disruption element to even natural fragrances. But,
Yep.
like I use essential oils as perfume. I don't use, like conventional perfumes. And, I think that just to have them on all the time and to, be diffusing in your house all the time will have some, yeah, I think like we're just not meant to have that, those smells all the
Mhm.
time around us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the goal of your house would be if you were gone for a while and you walk in your home and there's no smell, you can't smell anything. That's
Right.
that's like the goal. That's the ultimate.
Other than cooking.
Other than cooking.
That's a good smell to come home to.
That's a good smell. Yeah, we like that.
Yeah. So are there any other tips, or are those the
I
top
mean,
ones?
those are big ones. If you can do that, and filter your water, get rid of your
Mm,
plastics, get rid of the aluminum foil. Don't cook with that. Get rid of your microwave. Um, Using those apps and going through the rest of your personal care products.
yeah.
All those things are things you can implement today, right away.
What would you use instead of aluminium foil, or you just the tray, just the oven tray, and clean it
Just,
after?
yeah, just the oven tray, clean it
Yeah.
after. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
That's a bugger
Yeah, or the parchment
though.
paper, depending on what you're cooking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome, Ryan. This has been so enlightening. I'm so grateful. And yeah, I think that people are going to get so much out of just realizing, sometimes people just need a little bit of a reminder of the things that we're doing that maybe not necessarily the best for our health, and how we can mitigate that or remove it or find different solutions. So, for anyone in the UK, I will post in the show notes some companies for mold remediation. But for anyone in the US or anyone wanting to do a Zoom consult, where can they find you?
Yeah, just go to the website testmyhome.com, and right there on the homepage you can schedule a time with me. Just jump on my calendar and we'll do a Zoom walkthrough of your house personally and do some one-on-one consulting and get a plan going for you. Get you started down the road. Meet
Awesome.
you
We'll
where
make
you're
sure
at.
to link all of that in the show notes as well, so you can get easy access to that. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. I have enjoyed talking about mold, believe it or not.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you.